I'm Sarah Benwell, the editor of fundoperator.com and insuranceinvestor.com. I'm here with Simona Scarpaleggia, board member at Edge. Simona's speaking at our ESG Investment Leader Conference later this year, and ahead of that, we wanted to catch up with her just to get a little bit of a flavour of what she's going to be talking about. Hi, Simona. Thanks for joining me.
Hello. Nice to see you here.
Thank you. So my first question, and it's a big one, is how important is the S when it comes to ESG investments?
Well, the S is becoming, in fact, more and more important. And the meaning of this has, in fact, has morphed over time. At the beginning, it was meant more as a human right factor to be analyzed, whereas now it is more importantly turned into something that is related to the impact that a business or an organization can have on people, and namely on the impact on employees, on the investment that companies do on employees, on how diverse is the workplace, on the impact on the community, on the health and safety on products, and also on the impact on their supply chain. So it's much broader and much more material than what it was meant before.
That makes sense. And, you know, recently we've seen loads of attention on the environment, and governance is something that we've always considered in when it comes to investments, but social seems to have been a little bit neglected. Do you have any thoughts on why that might be?
Well, most probably it is because it was difficult, and still it's not as simple to measure. There are very different measurements of this S, and they're not always aligned. So we are in need of a standardization of measurement. All that said, measurement is anyhow very important because it sets the base, it allows to set goals, it monitors the progress. So it's, as a matter of fact, is the proof of a certain accountability and materiality of what we are talking about. So that was, I think, the main difficulty. However, now the businesses are really, and organizations at large are really looking into how do we cluster the different topics related to the S and how do we measure them.
Great. And that leads me nicely into my next question, which is, you know, how can insurance investors and other institutional investors go about defining and understanding social factors in the context of the investments that they're making?
Well, as long as they are really understanding now how the S is important, there are a couple of pillars in the analysis that the investors could do to understand where an organization stands in terms of the S. So first of all, they should see that there is a roadmap that the organization has put in place to make sure that the S is taken properly into account, so that there is an assessment of the materiality of the S connected factors, that there is a consistency between the company or the organization strategy and what has been highlighted by the assessment of the materiality of the S, that there is a strategizing of these factors into the plans of the organization, and ultimately that there are actions that tackle those points so that they really can walk the talk. And since there is now a clear correlation between taking S seriously into account and the performance of an organization, not yet a causality, but definitely a correlation, this should be really a point of attention, because organizations that have the right talents, who are retained, who are committed, and who express different dimensions of diversity, definitely those organizations perform better. So it's also a risk mitigation for investors, just to give an example, but there is much more.
Great, thank you. And my last question for today, you know, when we talk about measurement, how easy is it to actually measure social factors, and what sort of data should our insurance investors and institutional investors be considering when it comes to that measurement?
Yes, even though there are different measurements and different indexes, yet we can rely on some measurement anyhow. So, for instance, when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's important to consider which is the representation of different dimensions of, let's say, gender or race and ethnicity or age, which is the representation of this group in the organization, which is the pay equity in the organization, to what extent is respected, and if there is any gaps, if minimum wages are guaranteed, if the health and safety of the employees and co-workers is guaranteed, if the health and safety of the products is guaranteed. So you see, there is a long list, and we can bring them to a measure, to a number, and this number can be followed up over the time, and this is important.
Lovely, thank you. I mean, obviously, we've only just barely scratched the surface of this huge topic, and I can't wait to hear more from you at our conference later in the year on this. But thank you very much for joining us and giving us a little preview of what kind of things you might be discussing.
Thank you very much looking forward to meet you soon.